Rodney and his machine. Mr. Rodney, the baker, was busy loading his van with buns and cakes. Rodney shouted at his son. "Where are you?" Rodney was in his room. He was half asleep and half awake. He was looking at the wall and thinking. He was trying to think of a new idea. He wanted to think of something to make his daddy's buns the best in the town, or something to keep the bread warm in his daddy's van. Rodney shouted his dad again. Rodney jumped up and ran downstairs. "Rodney, Rodney," said Mr. Rodney, "have you forgotten? Today we need to take our buns to the Charlie's tea shop. If Dan and Don Charlies like the buns, they'll sell them for us." "They like them, Dad," said Rodney, "I'm sure." However, Mr. Rodney was not so sure. Dan and Don Charlies were difficult. Everyone knew that. Mr. Rodney loaded the buns into the back of the van and made Rodney sit in the front. Then he started the engine and they drove off. Don Charles was waiting for them at the door of his tea shop. He looked at his watch and looked at the van. He was not a patient man. He was a short man with a long face. He hated wasting time. He never wasted his time by smiling. Then Charles was in the tea shop dusting some very old tables. He looked up and saw Mr. Rodney, but he did not smile. He never smiled and he never laughed. Mr. Rodney and Rodney went into the tea shop. Mr. Rodney put 2 large buns on 2 plates. Don took a small bite, then took an even smaller bite. They both looked sad and sorry. "Not bad," said Don. "Not bad. Not much will they cost?" asked Dan. Mr. Rodney told them the price. "That's too much, said Dan and Don Charles together. "They're nice buns, they're good buns, but they're too expensive. We have to pay for the tea, and we have to pay for the shop. We have to pay for the chairs and tables, and we have to pay to keep them clean." Mr. Rodney sighed and shook his head. Dan and Don Charles did not want to sell his buns. "I can help you," said Rodney. "How?" asked Dan. Rodney did not know, but he thought too quickly. Suddenly he had an idea. "I've got a machine. It will keep your tables clean," he said. Don looked and Dan and made a strange face. They made a strange face back at Don. "All right," they said. "Bring it to the tea shop and we'll look at it." When Rodney got back to the bakery, he went straight to his room and started making a clever and wonderful machine. He stayed in his room for days, thinking and working on his new machine. Strange sounds came from his room. At the end of a week, he opened his door. Dad, it works, he shouted. "Come and look." Mr. Rodney went to look. He saw a rubbish bin with wheels and bits of wire coming out of it. It had one long arm with a wet sponge on the end of it. When Rodney switched on the machine, the arm moved from side to side. "My machine is called Buzz 1, said Rodney happily. The next day, they loaded Buzz 1 into the van and took it to the Charlie's tea shop. Don and Dan sat down on 2 very old chairs. They crossed their arms and looked unhappily at the machine. Are you ready to be surprised? Asked Rodney, and he switched on the machine. Dan and Don were surprised. The machine made a coughing noise and jumped and knocked a plate of food off one of the dirty tables. Half the food spilled over Don and the other half spilled over Dan. It made a terrible mess. "You fool!" shouted Dan. "Look at our trousers!" "It nearly worked," said Rodney quietly. "Get out of our tea shop!" shouted Dan. "Get out!" Mr. Bodney and Rodney went back to the bakery. Rodney sat and thought for an hour or two. He thought about the plate of food, and he thought about Don and Dad. Then he thought about the dirty old chairs and all the dirty tables. Then he had a new idea. He stayed in his room again and worked very, very hard for a week. Mr. Bodney heard a lot of strange sounds coming from Rodney's room. Then the strange sounds stopped. Rodney sat and looked at the large tin box with the colored lights on the top and wheels on the bottom. There were bits of wire coming out of the sides of the box. There were 3 long metal arms with 3 paint brushes in different sizes on the ends, large, medium, and small. Mr. Bodney listened outside the door. He heard Rodney singing. Rodney was painting his new machine. He put a drop of paint on the tin box and a drop on his pajamas. He put a drop on the metal arms and a drop on his cheek. Then Rodney opened his door very quickly and tripped over his dad. "Just look at this," Rodney said, jumping up. Mr. Bodney looked. "Dad," said Rodney, "this is Buzz 2. The paint machine Buzz 2 say hello to Dad." The lights on top of Buzz 2 flashed on and off. "Hello to you too," said Mr. Bodney. "The Charlie's tea shop needs a nice bright tables, and this machine can paint them for Dan and Don Charlie's," Rodney explained. "When I tell this machine to do something, it does it. If I say PAINT, the table, it will do it." Rodney had to spell the word paint. "If I say the word properly, Buzz 2 will go ahead and PAINT, explained Rodney. The machine was wonderful and clever. When he heard Rodney's voice, it worked. "Shall we try?" asked Rodney. "Shall I tell Buzz to paint my table?" As soon as the machine heard the word paint, the metal arms with a large brush began to move. Rodney clapped his hands and said, "Stop, Buzz 2, we are not ready yet." The machine stopped. "Good," said Mr. Rodney. "It looks like a good machine this time." There was no more paint, so Rodney hurried into the kitchen and came back with a can of syrup. "Syrup is like paint," he said. Buzz 2 won't know the difference between syrup and paint. He poured the syrup into the hole on the top of the tin box and stepped back. "Buzz 2 painted the top of the table," said Rodney. The machine began to move again. The lights flashed on and off, and the metal arms put the brushes into the syrup. Then the brushes began to paint. Soon there was syrup all over Rodney's table, and there was syrup in a lot of other places too. Rodney and his dad had to hide behind the chair until Buzz 2 finished. "Now we need a machine to clean up the syrup," said Mr. Bodney unhappily. The machine works, Dad, shouted Rodney, jumping up and down in the syrup on the floor. It really works, and it'll work for Dad and Don. Then they'll be pleased and they'll buy our buns. All right, said his dad, but he did not sound as sure as Rodney. The next day, Mr. Rodney went to see Dan and Don. He told them all about Buzz 2, the paint machine. It's a wonderful and clever machine, he said. Dan and Don looked at each other and talked quietly. They did not look very happy. Wonderful and clever? Asked Dan. Does it spill food over people? Asked Don. Mr. Rodney answered, No, it doesn't. All right, said Dan and Don Charles. We'll come and look at it. Don and Dan Charles went to the bakery. That evening at 7 o'clock, they knocked on the bakery door. Rodney opened the door and smiled at them as sweetly as he could. They did not smile back at him. Rodney took them to his bedroom. Mr. Rodney was waiting for them. He looked worried. He was holding a new can of red paint. Rodney poured the red paint into the hole on the top of Buzz 2 and switched it on. Buzz 2 painted the table, said Rodney. The big brush moved up and down and from side to side. Buzz 2 painted the top of the table bright red in 2 minutes. Don looked at Buzz 2. His eyes got bigger. He looked very interested. Wonderful, he said. This machine can save us a lot of money at the tea shop. Then Don started to think. Does it only paint tables? He asked. Can I paint chairs too? Oh yes, it can paint chairs, said Rodney. Watch. Rodney quickly picked up a chair and put it in front of a paint machine. Then he said, Buzz 2, paint the chair. Buzz 2's lights flashed on and off, but it did not move. It doesn't work, said Dan and Don together. It doesn't understand, said Rodney. It's only painted the tops of tables before. Rodney looked at the paint machine and said, Buzz 2, paint the legs. This time the paint machine began to move. It used a small brush and started painting the newest leg very quickly. Oh no, shouted Rodney. This isn't right, said Mr. Rodney. It was not right. Buzz 2 was painting the newest leg, but the newest leg was not a chair leg, it was a Don's leg. Don screamed like a pig and tried to move away as quickly as he could. However, Buzz 2 followed him and continued to paint. One of the Don's legs was already red, and the machine wanted to paint the other one. Help! Shouted Don Charles. Yes, of course, said Rodney. Buzz 2, paint the back. Buzz 2 stopped painting Don's legs and started painting his back. Oh no, shouted Mr. Rodney. Paint the back of the chair. Stop, Buzz 2, stop. However, it was too late. Don Charles had 2 red legs and 1 red back. He did not look very happy. Oh no, said Rodney. He could not say anything else. Then he heard a strange sound. He looked at Buzz 2, but the sound was not coming from the paint machine. It was coming from Dan. Tears were running down his face, and he was laughing. This was very unusual for Dan. I've never seen Dan laugh before, said Mr. Rodney. I've never seen anything so funny, said Dan, laughing loudly. Oh, Don, it is so funny. Look at yourself. Don looked at his red legs and felt his wet back with his fingers. It's not funny, he screamed. It's not funny at all. It is, shouted Dan, laughing more loudly. Really? Said Don angrily. Then he pointed at Dan and shouted, Buzz too, paint the ears. The machine made a loud noise and its lights flashed on and off. Then it began to paint Dan. Ouch! Shouted Dan. Ouch! 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 He tried to move away, but the paint machine was faster than him. He had one red ear, then he had two red ears. Now Buzz too, shouted Don, paint the nose. Buzz too painted Dan's nose. Ouch! Shouted Dan. Ouch! 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 Then Don's mouth began to move very slowly. He made a little noise, then he laughed loudly. Dan was laughing too. Ha ha! Laughed Dan. What a wonderful machine! We must have one too, Don. Yes, we must have one, agreed Don, laughing. We must also have a lot of Mr. Bodney's buns to sell too. So Rodney and Mr. Bodney took Buzz to the Charlie's tea shop. It was very popular. When Mr. Bodney and Rodney brought their buns to the tea shop, they liked to stay and watch Buzz to working. It's a wonderful and clever machine, Rodney, said Mr. Bodney. Well done. The paint machine was very successful. The tables and chairs in the Charlie's tea shop were painted several times. Of course, sometimes the machine made a mistake and it painted Dan or Don. This made everyone cheer and clap and laugh loudly. People were often laughing in Charlie's tea shop. However, no one laughed louder or longer than Dan and Don themselves. The end.